How could someone who looks so innocent be so evil? Lucy Letby, the baby killer nurse.
Oh no, it can't be Lucy. Not nice Lucy.
Tonight, explosive new evidence.
She wants the attention of the doctor, and he gives it to her.
The moment this mum and dad caught her trying to kill their newborn baby.
It's sickening. It's just absolutely, it's unbelievable. It's incomprehensible. And it's maddening.
But when this doctor tried to warn everyone,
and this is the most chilling thing,
he was silenced by bureaucrats and forced to apologize to her.
the very fact that the police, after listening to us for less than 10 minutes, realised that this is something that they had to be involved with, to me speaks volumes. And I could have punched the air.
Hello, I'm Michael Usher and welcome to Spotlight. What drove a pretty young nurse from a good home and a loving family to kill time and time again? In this special edition, we investigate the psychology behind her twisted need to take the lives of defenceless babies. We'll bring you fresh evidence, critical vision, her secret yearnings and her shocking confession. Plus heart-wrenching new testimony from the parents of her first intended victim, if only they'd been listened to. And we explore the bizarre love triangle. Her obsession with a married doctor. Was lust her motive for murder? This is what we know. Lucy Letby was the only child doted on by her parents. She craved attention, and when she left home to become a neonatal nurse, she sought it elsewhere. Letby found it in the life and death drama she herself created when she began killing premature babies in her care. But tragically, the 25-year-old was the last person anyone suspected. She acted too nice and looked too innocent. But deep down, she was pure evil.
Talking about vulnerable babies in a hospital, no less. It's unprecedented. It's something which you would never believe could be possible. Potential that there could be a serial killer in their local hospital.
Butter wouldn't melt in her mouth.
Well, I think I can remember saying, oh no, it can't be Lucy, not nice Lucy.
It just couldn't be true.
To say that she could have harmed any baby, it's just not in her nature.
Even Australia's preeminent criminal psychologist, Tim Watson-Munro, struggles to comprehend the psychotic psychology at work.
So the last thing you think when you go to the doctor or go to hospital, have a surgeon, even as an adult, that they're going to kill you, let alone your child.
After school, Lucy Letby left home to study nursing in Chester, in the north of England.
She bought a house, adopted cats, rescue cats, which were her whole world, and went out salsa dancing. She was doing the job that she loved and the job that she's always wanted to do.
Let's go to when she first started working. She joins that hospital in 2010.
Yes.
She's well-liked, she does her job. Nothing happens for about 5 years. Then we have this killing spree over a year. What happened?
I think she puts her toe in the water. It almost becomes like an addiction with them, as it does with other types of serial killers. They think about it, they fantasize about it, they then act upon it, and it escalates, as it did with her. I suspect that after one or two died, she knew she could get away with it.
On the outskirts of Chester, we meet Victoria and Michael Whitfield. They believe they are the first people targeted by Lucy Letby. In November 2013, Victoria gave birth to Felicity. She was born at 34 weeks, tiny but healthy. That is until the early hours of November 20, when Victoria walked in on Lucy Letby hovering over her baby.
My first encounter with her was basically the look. When she was standing over Felicity's cot, I went down at 3 o'clock in the morning I don't know why I went down, I just had a feeling that I needed to go down. I went down, I was walking down towards the NCU unit, and she was standing next to the cot, and she just looked up, stared at me, walked off. I walked towards the cot. At the time, I didn't think anything of her looking and walking away. And then I sat down, and then that's when all hell broke loose, and all the buzzers started going off.
So that's Lucy. Is that the look you saw on that woman's face that night?
Yeah, there was no smile, it was just like that, just a blank expression. And it was just a look up and a walk away. She was the first woman who washed, bathed, put a nappy on my baby. And it just sickens me to the stomach. It was just a blank look, like a glance up. There was no smile, there was no talk. It was just, she was standing there doing whatever she was doing. She just looked up and then she just walked away from the incubator.
And then you said all hell broke loose. So what happened then?
I went over by the incubator, had a little look at Felicity, sat down by the cot, and then buzzers started going off, all alarms and bleepers started going off. A nurse ran over, it wasn't Lucy, I remember that much, that ran over to press the emergency buzzer. And then from that moment, I think I must have just gone into extreme shock because a nurse turned around and said, "Get your husband." And I was just still sat there, I just went numb. And then she turned around and screamed at me, she said, "Get your husband now." And then I jumped up and basically went to call Mike.
When you got there, what was the scene that confronted you?
Carnage.
What were any of the nurses or the doctors saying to you in this panic-stricken moment?
Basically, they turned around and said to us, "She's extremely poorly, her lungs have collapsed, and we suggest that if you want to, you get her blessed now because there's a chance she isn't going to make it." But what was more shocking than anything before all that was the 2 days before this, when she was born, she was breathing for herself, she was on CPAP, she was doing well.
Whatever Letby did left their daughter fighting for life. Vicky and Mike were told to prepare for the worst.
We got the grandparents in and we got her blessed and I held her hand and I just remember saying, "You're not leaving me with a photo lady, come on, you're going to pull through this." And they did manage to, they had to fully incubate her, but they did manage to stabilise her, although she wasn't breathing for herself. It was horrendous.
I felt like I had my heart ripped out that morning. Yeah, it just felt like the world came crumbling down.
Perhaps because Vicky caught Letby before the kill was done, baby Felicity survived. But sadly, other parents would not be as fortunate. Among the victims Letby killed or maimed were twin boys.
Can you remember when you first saw them?
It was just like a sheer elation, happiness.
You remember feeling like a new dad?
Yeah, I was very proud.
The twins were born 10 weeks early. 5 days after their birth, one of the boys suddenly became unwell. Lucy Letby was the nurse caring for him.
In the corridor, I could immediately hear crying. I walked into the room, seeing it was my boy. He had blood around his mouth. And Lucy was there, but faffing about, not doing anything. I was like, what's the matter with him? Lucy said, "Oh, don't worry." She has this really calm demeanour about her, and she's, very, very softly spoken. And don't worry, the registrar was coming. She'd already contacted him. He was on his way, and she told me to go back to the ward.
I was trying to reassure my wife that, listen, these people are experts, and, if they say there's not a problem, you've got nothing to worry about. And that was the first phone call. Quickly followed up by a second phone call with a midwife saying, you need to get here now. And there was a third phone call telling me, where are you? The priest has been called. And I just knew. I knew at that point, you know, you don't call a priest unless someone's dying.
Their baby had little time left to live. What no one knew then is that Letby had injected air into his bloodstream. It was one of her preferred methods of murder. These are the weakest and most vulnerable of babies. Neonatal, they're premature. Does that also factor into her evil, if you like?
It's almost like a God complex, isn't it? That you have life-making decisions. You have power over life or death. She chose certain people to die and others didn't die. That feeds into her ego in a fairly significant way.
After your son had died, what was Lucy Letby doing?
She asked if I would like her to bath him in front of me, so I said yeah. So she bathed him and then she dressed him a little woolen gown and gave him back to us. And we held him for a little bit longer.
It would have given her a thrill, given her some excitement and a sense of power and a sense of being acknowledged by her peers. So here she is, a poor baby's died on her watch. She'd get a lot of sympathy and attention.
This is a nightmare.
After each of the deaths, Lucy Letby sent texts to colleagues.
I can't go to sleep.
We lost a little one overnight. Very unexpected and sad. How do such sick babies get through and others just die so suddenly and unexpectedly? I think there's an element of fate involved. There's a reason for everything.
This is a nightmare.
But Lucy Letby's perverse public behaviour was even sicker than messages to her colleagues. She got a thrill out of toying with the emotions of the parents whose children she'd killed. She'd even send them sympathy cards.
There are no words to make this time any easier. Thinking of you today and always. Sorry I cannot be there to say goodbye.
She sent notes to some of the families. She's grieving with them. She acts like she is bereaved. What does that say about her?
I think it's more likely a ruse that she's trying to cover her tracks. She's beyond reproach. She's an empathic person. An empathic person would not kill children in this way. So I think she's covering her tracks with the notes as well.
When in fact, quite clearly, she lacks any empathy at all, doesn't she?
Well, it's the hallmark of being a psychopath. I think if she'd not been caught, she would have kept going, which tends to be the career path for serial killers like this. You can only assume it's about power, it's about being needed. She had an interesting childhood as an only child, very pampered.
Let's have a look at this photo for me here, Tim. I mean, we've got... It strikes me that it's like a teenager's bedroom. The pink dressing gown, the bucket, the fairy lights. It's quite messy too. Have a look at that and tell me what you think of... Is this the photo of a woman in her sort of late 20s or 30?
Maybe some, but it's infantile, isn't it? Fairy lights, untidy, childlike in many ways.
It's not that of a young, mature woman, if I can put it that way.
Look, I agree with that, and my understanding is that she didn't have relationships, and this was one of the sources of despair for her, that she thought she would remain single and childless, and there's a certain irony to that.
But to her friends, Lucy Letby was perfectly normal. She liked to party and she loved her job.
Did Lucy always know she wanted to do nursing?
Yeah, it was the only career that I ever remember her saying that she wanted to go and do. Outside of our group, she would present as more shy, reserved, serious, level-headed. But inside the safety of our group, she sort of lets her hair down a bit more and is goofy and makes us all laugh. Very bubbly, loves a cocktail. You know, just the fun of getting dressed up and going out with your friends.
Dawn.
She is the kindest person that I've ever known. She would only ever want to help people. To say that she could have harmed any baby, it's just not in her nature.
This case in itself is very unusual because she doesn't fit with the typical profile of a serial killer. It's remarkable that they didn't join the dots sooner, that every time she was working on her own, there was a spike in the death chart.
For too long, doctors thought the deaths were the sad consequences of babies born too young to survive. But as the fatalities mounted up, some began to join the dots.
The thoughts started springing into our heads of, could she be doing something deliberate? Could somebody be doing something deliberate?
In the summer of 2016, Lucy Letby was moved to administrative duties and the suspicious deaths stopped. But what happens next staggers belief. Hospital managers took her side and called in whistleblowing doctors for a dressing down.
We behaved unprofessionally, we bullied her, and then read out a letter from her, which was a very aggressive letter from her, basically saying, I'm going back to work and you have to work with me and I'm going to prove to you that I'm a great nurse and I'm not a killer like you say. And then Tony Chambers finished off by saying, so she's coming back to work. And this is the most chilling thing. I'm drawing a line under this, you will draw a line under this, and if you cross that line there will be consequences for you.
Tony Chambers, the chief executive, said that we were to apologise to Lucy Letby and that a line had been drawn and that we were not to cross that line. And if we were to cross the line, there would be consequences.
They were forced to write a letter of apology to Lucy Letby. We would like to apologise for any inappropriate comments. We are very sorry for the stress and upset that you have experienced in the last year. They were even made to attend mediation sessions with her. And Letby went back to work. And soon, the killing began again. But even now, colleagues refuse to believe someone so innocent could be capable of such evil.
She has friendship groups. She is somebody that's seen not suspiciously. There's no evidence that she's fascinated by serial killers.
But Lucy Letby was fascinated with someone in particular, an obsessive fascination with a married doctor. Next,
She wants the attention of the doctor, and he gives it to her.
Was lust the motive for murder?
It's hard to understand why someone would abuse that trust, would abuse all the responsibility of having vulnerable patients and actually try to harm them. I can't begin to imagine why someone would do that, what motives they'd have for doing that.
In January 2012, when Lucy Letby joined the Countess of Chester Hospital, south of Liverpool, she immediately impressed with her dedication and care. Then, in 2015, something changed. Not long after her 25th birthday, Lucy began work with intensive care babies and, within weeks, murdered her first newborn. She tried to kill his twin sister the next day. Whether her victims lived or died, Letby loved the drama, not least because it gave her a chance to be near the doctor sent in to save them. The doctor, a married man she was obsessed with. In her diaries, Lucy Letby spoke of her despair at being unmarried and childless. But the fun-loving Lucy may have had different ideas.
Dawn.
Letby enjoyed attention. And the attention she craved most was a doctor, who the court called Dr. A. She knew him well, and she also knew he would be one of the first to be called whenever there was an emergency in the neonatal unit. You know, when she says, "I'll never have children or marry," in fact, we've learned through the trial that she was trying to impress one of the medical staff there, wasn't she? There was a connection.
Dr. A. Clearly, she wanted his affection, his attention, and his approval.
Might she be trying to impress him with the crimes that she was committing, or at least those scenarios where she played hero, nurse, and allegedly saved some of the babies?
It's quite possible. It's not logical. I mean, her thinking is evil. It's not psychotic. And so if she's craving attention, she's working in a hospital, she wants the attention of the doctor, and he gives it to her. So it's very reinforcing.
The human cost in all of this doesn't matter to her, as long as she gets the attention of the doctor of whom she has a crush on.
So it speaks to her adolescent way of thinking in some ways. She's cunning and calculating and clearly looking for status as well. Maybe she had a fantasy that she might end up with him. All problems solved then. She's got the status, maybe a family, and living with a doctor in a hospital. It's infantile thinking. It's adolescent in its way, but that may well have been part of her mindset.
One case convinced the police there was a killer in the hospital. It involved the family with twins whose son died back in August 2015. The next day, his twin brother also became very unwell.
This can't be happening. It's almost bang on 24 hours since our other son had died. This just can't be happening. So I went and I sat with him all night. His heart rate was absolutely through the roof. You know, it didn't come down, and I was just like, just come down, you know, and I'm almost trying to will the machine, you know, bring his heart rate down, make it okay.
Medics managed to save her baby, but he was badly harmed by the trauma.
He's got severe learning difficulties.
Much later, this would provide a breakthrough in the case, when testing proved their baby had been injected with insulin. In other words, a human hand, not natural causes, had been involved.
How Lucy is it?
Yes. The insulin cases were a real milestone in the investigation. We were shocked, really to the core, to find that a baby had been injected with insulin. It's another layer of surprise, I suppose, as to the depths that Lucy Letby went to.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you in the back seat over here.
Hold on, Mum, to get this together.
Okay, just take a seat in there for me, Lucy. I'll move that seat forward a bit. Sure.
Yeah, I just had knee surgery. So.
Oh, right, okay.
And here we have the mug shot, which is, it strikes me as in absolutely emotionless, of Lucy.
Very typical mug shot, I might say, but yes, there's no emotion there. Just staring blankly at the camera. Extraordinary photograph.
When Letby was taken in for questioning, she continued to lie, trying to convince the police the deaths were a series of coincidences.
They told me there was terribly a lot more deaths than I think just sort of was there a lot of them. Did you have any concerns that there was a rise in the mortality rate? Yes. Okay, so tell me about that. What concerns did you have? I think we don't just notice as a teenager, there's this time that this
Her computer was seized, as were her diary and post-it notes, revealing her innermost thoughts. They would become crucial evidence. This one main note takes a little while to digest because there is so much written down in this that she's pouring out onto what appears to be just a post-it note of some kind. I am an awful person. Hate myself. Panic. Fear. Lost. And then why me? I did this. And hate scrawled around over and over again in black. But the most telling thing about this note, I am evil, I did this.
This is not the handwriting or statements of a crazy person. The self-loathing is clearly hate, panic, fear and lost, insight to what she's doing perhaps. But the timing of the note I think would be interesting.
It's all evidence collected either from her home or in her possessions at the time of arrest that was used in the trial. This is extremely dark as well. Kill me. Extracted from one of her notes.
Very dark. Possible signs of, an awareness of the magnitude of her criminal behaviour. And I think it also perhaps reflects that she feels that it's beyond her control. And the only way to stop it is to end her life. But she doesn't end her life and nobody kills her.
Well, then she doesn't end her life, but then she pleads not guilty as well.
Yes.
So all of this self-loathing, admission of sorts in all of these crazy notes. But she pleads not guilty.
No remorse. She wants to roll the dice one more time. Who knows? She might just get away with it.
That's somebody who is struggling with demons and she writes it down. That's her personality. That's what she does. She writes her thoughts down. But that's a confession. That's her confessions of a killer.
Coming up.
And you will spend the rest of your life in prison.
There's a high possibility in my eyes that this could have been stopped before it got as far as it did.
Later.
I'm pretty accustomed to offending just about everybody. Right now, it is a reasonable thing in the year 2023. Death may not be inevitable. I'll tell you what's in there, spermidine.
Welcome back. Lucy Letby's trial lasted more than 9 months. Last week found guilty of murdering 7 newborn babies and attempting to kill 6 others. She'll go down in history as one of the world's worst child serial killers. But how many more victims are yet to be uncovered as British authorities continue to investigate her interactions with more than 4,000 children?
Did you have any concerns that there was a rise in mortality rate? Yes.
Extraordinary. We're dealing with somebody who's bad, not mad. Somebody who knew what they were doing, somebody who was aware of the consequences of what they were doing. In plain speak, a psychopath.
I sentence you to imprisonment for life. Because the seriousness of your offences is exceptionally high, I direct that the early release provisions do not apply. The order of the court, therefore, is a whole life order on each and every offence, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison.
Just how close do you think you came to losing your daughter?
Very, very close. The morning of November the 20th is a morning that will live with me for the rest of my life. It was very close.
Vicky, the truth of it is, had you not trusted that instinct, perhaps that mother's instinct, to go down to that unit that night at that exact time and perhaps disturbed Lucy Letby,
That's the scary
this could have been
thing.
very different.
Exactly.
That is the scary thing, and that could be the truth. Like I said, we don't know anything. This is why partly we're here. We want answers. We want them to look back at earlier cases. I don't believe that this person has worked in a hospital for all these years and waited until 2015 to start doing what she did. I honestly think that if the people above also need to answer questions, if they had listened to complaints that had been made, whether it was from a parent or whether it was from a medical expert, if they'd listened, logged and took note of what these people were saying, they might have been able to see a pattern. They might have been able to see things beforehand, and they might have picked up and stopped 2015 and 2016 happening for these families.
Yeah.
If someone had listened, those little 7 babies might still be alive today.
Exactly.
My tiny, feisty boy, my firstborn, my son. The shock and panic of the night that he collapsed will stay with me forever. His hand and footprint were made into a pendant. I wore it around my neck. It made me feel closer to him. When Lucy Letby was first arrested, these few tangible memories I had of my son felt tainted. She took those hands and footprints. You are evil. You did this.
We're the lucky ones. We get to tuck Felicity in at night, and our hearts just go out to the other parents because they don't get that. They've had that robbed from them, you know, the ability to touch the child and to tuck them in and to give them a kiss. The first memories, first days at school.
The hate, the anger and the frustration that we feel, even though it's been so many years and we do have our daughter, how it must be for them must be like torture. And my whole heart goes out to them. They can't just leave it at this. They need, and yes, she's got life. She can't get any more than what she's already got. However, there's a high possibility in my eyes that this could have been stopped before it got as far as it did.
Next, this man is spending $2 million a year to reverse the ageing process.
I'm accumulating aging damage slower than the average 10-year-old.
Without the tantrums.
And it's working.
And it leaves these little marks.
But you have to eat the same thing every day, Brian. This looks like the bottom of the Yarra.
Spermidine.
How to reverse the ageing process.
That's sacrilege in Australia. You know that, don't you?
Yeah.